Hello and welcome to my guide to HighLord Kruul in the Mage Tower Challenge for all tanks. This video will be set up with having a general guide to the mechanics of the challenge first, then some tips and clarification for each individual tank class after. If you already have the knowledge of the general mechanics of the fight, feel free to skip to any of the classes that you are particularly interested in. This fight is a two-phase fight, with phase 1 being against Inquisitor Varus, who is surrounded by an aura of decay which decreases your maximum health the longer you stand in it, preventing you from staying on him for too long. He will also be continuously casting a spell called Mindrid on you for the entire phase, which is a fairly heavy-hitting spell. Coupled with too many stacks of the aura, this can easily kill you. However, he is vulnerable to all forms of CC and interrupts, and thus his cast should be interrupted whenever possible, especially when you're at high stacks of the aura. You must make sure to save at least one form of interrupt for him, however, as he will occasionally cast the spell Drain Life, and this absolutely must be interrupted at all costs, or he will simply heal himself up. Varus is the primary focus of this phase, and you must keep damaging him consistently, as the phase only ends when he dies. There are also a variety of adds to deal with, however, and the first one unique to this phase, and that is the Tormenting Orbs, or eyeball adds as I usually refer to them. These eyes don't do any direct damage, but they will periodically channel a beam on you that if you are not facing directly at the eye when it goes off, it will knock you back. Depending on other mechanics occurring and your own positioning when this happens, this can either be simply mildly annoying to completely deadly if it knocks you off the platform. So make sure to face the eyes during the beam and to kill them whenever possible. They are generally your lowest priority, however. The second type of add you have to deal with, and these will persist into phase 2 as well, are the Smoldering Infernals. They deal very low, practically ignorable damage when they're on you, and they lose HP continuous, meaning they will die eventually even without you having to damage them. However, they cast a spell called Smash, which is a frontal line ability that will knock you drastically far back, which if you are hit, can often be fatal. It is also important to note that these adds will revive a certain amount of time after they die, so they will never fully go away throughout the entire encounter. So be wary when one seems to be reforming so you don't get accidentally smashed by an infernal that you thought was dead. Sometimes the smashes seem to go off even when the infernal still seems like a corpse. The final type of adds are the Nether Horrors, which are a group of about 4 will spawn all around the platform. These adds must be picked up and then AoE'd down. They will only auto you, but their autos apply a debuff called Saya Talons, which increase the amount of arcane damage you take. This is only particularly troublesome to Death Knights, Bear Druids, and Demon Hunters, as in these tank challenges the adds will also cast a spell called Netherstorm after being alive for a few seconds. With enough stacks of Saya Talons, this can often instantly kill you, so be sure to AoE it down as fast as possible. You will also have Prophet Velen in this phase helping you by periodically spawning holy orbs around himself. These orbs, when picked up, will send out a shockwave, stunning all enemies on the platform for 8 seconds and fully healing you. Use these orbs sparingly, as you do have a limited number of them, but don't be stingy, as they will despawn over time. After Varus dies, phase 2 will begin and HighLord Kruul will descend. Nether Horrors will still spawn, and Infernals will still be around, so be wary of them, but all eyeball adds will despawn upon Varus' death. Multiple purple beams of energy will begin moving around the center of the platform, and these will push you around and do mild damage. However, they are more annoying than particularly deadly, but be wary of them as they can push you into a position that you really don't want to be in, such as into a smash or into other deadly effects, or even a holy orb. HighLord Kruul has 3 abilities himself that you must be very wary of. The first of which is his Annihilate, which is a stacking effect that smashes you for very high physical damage. This is in effect the enrage timer of the fight, as the damage of each subsequent Annihilate ramps up as he stacks his debuff on you. So make sure to save more powerful defensive cooldowns as the stacks get higher. This ability does have a short cast time, which can be interrupted with stun effects, although it won't completely stop the ability, as he will cast it immediately after the stun wears off, but it can delay the strike, buying you more time to set up your defenses against it, and to delay each subsequent Annihilate. HighLord Kruul will also periodically cast an ability called Nether Stomp on you, which is an ability where he will fly into the air and come crashing down on top of you, leaving a pool of green fire on the ground that deals a very high amount of magic damage and slows you. Get out of it as fast as possible by any means possible, and use defensive abilities as appropriate. Kruul will also cast a spell called Twisted Reflection on you periodically. This is interruptible and absolutely must be, as if he gets it off, he will debuff you so that every auto attack that lands on you will heal the attacker for 5% of their maximum health. A single auto with this spell on you can easily drag the fight on for far too long and mean failure, so make sure to interrupt. If he does accidentally get this off on you, all is not immediately lost. Quickly stun him and pick up a Holy Orb and the debuff will be removed. Velen will still be around, spawning Holy Orbs in this phase, and Corvus Bloodthorn will be active and help you by damaging Kruul. The damage that she does is mostly negligible, and her presence is mostly ignorable, except to make sure that adds don't cast Netherstorm on top of her or Velen, as this will most likely kill them and fail the trial. Make sure to follow the mechanics, keeps adds off your allies, and Kruul will go down. The Vengeance Demon Hunter is easily the easiest of the tank challenges, with a playstyle that trivializes almost all aspects of the encounter, especially when overgeared. Use your leap ability to trivialize the knockback from the eyes and the infernals, burst the nether horrors down before they can channel the Netherstorm, and burst Varus whenever possible, and phase 1 goes down fairly easily. When Kruul drops, make sure you follow all of the base mechanics properly, and nothing should greatly trouble you in phase 2 either. Use Demon Spikes for every cast of Annihilate, use Fiery Brand for the second cast, Metamorphosis for the third, and Fiery Brand again for the fourth if he lives that long. Make liberal use of your mobility to pick up Holy Orbs and to dodge mechanics, and it'll go down without too much trouble. The Protection Warrior is most likely the second easiest tank to complete the challenge with at current gear levels, due mostly to the ease at which their playstyle trivializes Phase 2. Phase 1 for Warriors is all about survival. Make sure Varus' casts are interrupted or controlled, or just have Spell Reflect up whenever you are at high stacks of the Decaying Aura, and make sure to continuously kill adds for Victory Rush procs. Warriors' charges and leaps can easily trivialize the knockback effects present in the fight, and therefore your primary goal should simply be to survive the damage and unload on Varus at every opportunity. Don't be afraid to use orbs in an emergency, and once you make it to phase 2, your victory is almost assured. Your artifact ability can easily handle almost every hit of Kruul's Annihilate, and use Shield Block if it happens to be down. Use stuns to interrupt Kruul's Annihilate to buy your artifact ability extra time, and use Last Stand, and then Shield Wall for the third and fourth Annihilate. Leap or intercept out of Kruul's ground effect, and, most importantly, use Spell Reflect on Kruul's Twisted Reflection. Yes, you can Spell Reflect his cast back on him, effectively making yourself unkillable by steady damage while that debuff is active on Kruul. Warriors trivialize Phase 2 more than any other tank, so focus on simply surviving Phase 1. The Brewmaster Monk is the next tank that has access to an ability to drastically trivialize the fight. Being a genius, myself, who rarely bothers to look up guides to fights before them, I completely missed it and ran a wrong talent. Generally, the Invoke Nizao talent will be drastically more useful than Special Delivery, which is a talent I ring, as this talent lets Nizao tank for you, letting you let your stacks of Decaying Aura rise greatly in Phase 1, as Nizao will be tanking the boss for you, and trivializing the Annihilates in Phase 2, as the Annihilates can be expended on your summoned add instead of upon yourself. So if you do run Summon Nizao, summon him at the start of the fight, and then fight him Varus as long as possible, attempting to make sure that Nizao is just about coming off cooldown when you down Varus, and then blow Nizao again on Kruul right before Kruul casts his first Annihilate. This completely trivializes the Enrage timer in Phase 2. If you decide to run the talents I ran, simply follow the mechanics normally. Expend as many Keg Smashes on Varus in Phase 1 as possible, clear out the eyes whenever you can. Use your Transcendence ability to hopefully negate a knockback, and make sure to be mindful of where you placed it so you don't run out of its range. Utilize your artifact ability primarily for damage, trying to catch the boss in as many adds as you possibly can for it. And in Phase 2, make sure to roll out of the Kruul's ground effects, interrupt his Twisted Reflection, and to have Ironskin brew up for every single Annihilate that you do take. Follow the base mechanics, and Kruul will go down. The Guardian Druid has a bit of a different playstyle in handling of the fight than other tanks, primarily due to the massive increase in size of the Decaying Aura around Varus. I found that a bit more of a passive playstyle against Varus in Phase 1 was more effective, only going in at him to either briefly refresh Thrash or to interrupt Drain Life. After interrupting Drain Life, I would stay on him to do as much damage as possible, and then I would back out and simply wait for another Drain Life cast, or go in to briefly refresh Thrash. Bear Druids also have a bit of an issue in dealing with the Nether Horror adds. Lacking very strong burst damage, the adds would often get to cast their Netherstorm spell, which can swiftly destroy you. So I found that saving my disorientating roar to interrupt that cast, or to use my artifact ability, which would burn them down very quickly, or to use Bark Skin, which thanks to the Bramble talent, adds a bit more AoE damage in order to help handle them. Thankfully, Bear Druid dot damage with both Thrash and Moonfire is very strong, so not having to go in constantly at Varus was not particularly a detriment. The strong damage of Moonfire with no cooldown and no resource cost also enables you to handle the eyes very easily and speed up the Infernal's death. Upon Kruul's landing, make sure to, of course, to interrupt Twisted Reflections as normal, and make sure to save at least 2, preferably 2, but at least 1 charge of Frenzied Regeneration for Kruul's Nether Stomp, as this is very damaging to Bear Druids, as Bear Druids don't have massive mobility and have a particular vulnerability to magic damage. Make sure to upkeep iron at least 1 stack, preferably 2 to 3 stacks for every single Annihilate cast, and utilize your survival instincts for later on casts. Make careful use of the Holy Orbs to interrupt damaging effects, make careful use of your cooldowns, and properly pace out the use of the Holy Orbs, and you will ensure victory. Blood Death Knights I classify as being one of the harder tanks, primarily due to the fact that they cannot overgear many of the mechanics that give them the most difficulty. While Blood Death Knights have little difficulty in surviving through the steady damage of Varus' Mind Rend cast or the auto attacks of Kruul, they are very vulnerable to knockbacks due to their lack of ranged abilities and lack of mobility. I recommend death gripping Varus to a corner of the room, as this can cause most of the eyes to spawn around this section of the platform, giving you much easier access to them. Be extremely watchful of the Infernals and the eye's knockback, as this will be the source of most of your deaths, and unfortunately more gear or artifact power can't really help you with that. The adds also have more HP than they do for many of the other tanks and cannot be quickly burned down, and they will cast Netherstorm, which will also quickly kill you. However, unlike with the Demon Hunter or Bear Druid tanks, the adds will not follow you while they are casting Netherstorm, and thus you can simply walk out of them. You will need to play a very aggressive playstyle against Varus, making sure to go in almost every time your stacks of Decaying Aura are down, be right back on him, wailing on him, as your steady damage or ranged abilities are very lacking. When Kruul comes down, make sure to still pay attention to the Nether Horrors, as they will not follow you when they cast Netherstorm, and if you accidentally kite Corvus Bloodthorn through their cast, it will quickly kill her and you will fail the encounter. Make sure to interrupt Kruul's Twisted Reflection, use Anti-Magic Shell, or Wraith Walk to survive or to quickly get out of Kruul's Nether Stomp, and make sure your health is topped off with at least a little bit of a Blood Shield for Kruul's first 2 Annihilates, and make sure you have Vampiric Blood or Icebound Fortitude up for the 3rd and 4th. The Protection Paladin I found to definitely be the most difficult challenge, which may be surprising considering the abilities that they have should trivialize many of the mechanics. They do have some of the same issues that Blood Death Knights have, in that they have weak range damaging abilities, excepting Avenger's Shield, and their lack of mobility makes handling the knockbacks from the eyes and the Infernals particularly devastating. And while their Avenger's Shield could handle the eyes fairly simply, being a strong ranged ability, you need to use it on Varus every cooldown. This keeps his Mind Rends under control, as it is a strong interrupt and enables you to easily handle his Drain Life. The main reason why the Paladin challenge in particular is so difficult is that both Varus and Kruul have almost double the HP that they do for almost every other Mage Tower tanking challenge for any of the other tanks. This forces you to play an incredibly aggressive style, spamming every single usable Avenger's Shield on Varus and staying in his aura as long as possible, making sure to pay very careful attention to Infernals and their smashes, as well as facing the eyes in order to survive Phase 1. In Phase 2, Kruul's extra health also drags out more Annihilates, so pace out your cooldowns in order to survive. Divine Shield and Blessing of Protection are both usable to stop an Annihilate, so his 3rd and 4th Annihilate should be stopped by those cooldowns respectively. Make sure you have Shield of the Righteous up for every single other cast, and your lighter cooldowns for the 2nd Annihilate. Use your steed to get out of his Nether Stomp, and of course a basic survivability rotation in order to survive the steady damage. As long as you can keep up your regular damage rotation, unloading with Seraphim and Avenging Wrath, and avoiding getting punted off the platform, Kruul will fall at your feet. A final few tips for the Mage Tower. Don't be afraid to take breaks and come back later. Several of the more difficult challenges I downed in only a couple of tries after taking a break and coming back to it. For many of the tanks, getting more gear can drastically make the challenge easier, so as time passes and your artifact weapon gets more trace and your item level goes up, come back to it for a much easier challenge. Make sure to use flasks, potions, and augment rune, you can purchase a reusable one on the Vindicar, and carry Drums of War for a Bloodlust heroism boost for Phase 2 when Kruul comes down. Specific legendaries can also help out greatly, though they are not essential. Hang in there and don't give up, and you will be rewarded with your challenge artifact appearance. Thanks for watching, and feel free to ask for any further clarification or tips down below.